Sorry, I forgot to press record. Could we start over? Just kidding. Okay, we are recording now because I did get some comments like Mel was very happy that we sent this to him. Okay, so sorry, Maria,
Yes.
thank you. That was so.
And in Hinduism,
yeah.
they have a lot of all their rituals are to the elements, actually to the elementals of fire and water and air. So in Hinduism, they work a lot with that. Is incorporated in the religion to recognize and honor, etc. All the different nature spirits and elementals.
Does that give way to all their festivals that they have? Is that what?
Yeah, that too. Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other comments about either what Maria addressed or the three paths? Okay, does anybody want to read the next paragraph about karma marga?
I can.
Thank you.
In the karma marga, a man learns by constant practice in daily life. In the home, he practices restraint of the senses, is self-denying, self-sacrificing. He gains control of the mind by his daily meditation, by accuracy and diligence in his business, by utilizing the constant opportunities of maintaining concentration and balance amid the distractions and the whirl of the common life of men.
Doug, I think you can go on because the second paragraph continues.
Thank you. When by lives of such effort he has prepared himself, he begins the karma yoga by which he learns to perform action as duty, without desire for fruit, renouncing the fruits of action, as it is called. He performs every duty with scrupulous fidelity, but he renounces all results. Finally, he performs every action as sacrifice to the Supreme, his only motive, by doing the will of Ishvara.
Maybe go to the next one, and then I think that finishes up the karma.
By this, through living in the world, though living in the world, he has no attachments and is at heart the unattached, the wanderer. By this, he builds his hut and has his solitary place for meditation. By this, he realizes the pure I and its unity with other eyes, and is the Hamsa. By this, he rises above the I and becomes the Parahamsa. By renunciation and sacrifice, Ahamkara is destroyed. And with its destruction, the blinding veils fall away from his eyes, and he is filled with jnana and bhakti, for the end of the three paths is one.
Then go ahead and read the footnotes. Do you have footnotes?
Yep. So the first footnote says, these stages are described below in the Jnana Marga. Number 2, the quality of I-ness, separateness. Number 3, these were the qualifications laid down by Sri Sankaracharya before a man was allowed to study Vedanta. For the Vedanta cannot be realized without yoga.
Okay, thanks. No, I don't have anything.
Yeah. The chapters 2 and 3, I think, of the Bhagavad Gita are beautiful about the karma yoga, about doing the action without seeking the fruit. I always found them very inspiring. So, anybody interested can read chapters 2 and 3, I think they were.
Yeah, I found it in the beginning, I found it interesting that sometimes we think we have our daily life and then we have our spiritual life. We go to the lodge meeting or we meditate. But no, in the first paragraph, he's it's stating that, by accuracy and diligence in his business, that it's something you can practice all the time. And sometimes at least I forget that. But, if you keep that focus and if you're living that, then no matter what you do, I guess can be a vehicle for that practice.
Mhm.
And did I read this wrong? It seems like she's almost saying that there is an order. The margas are in order. Like karma comes first, and then jnana, and then bhakti for the end of the three passes one. I don't know. Maybe I heard that wrong.
Yeah, theoretically you can get, to the end through any of the paths, but it's also a tricky concept because like Light on the Path says you need all the paths. Of course, there will be one that is our predominant approach because it has to do with our personalities, but I think it is important to incorporate elements from the other ones.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Maria. Unmute yourself, Maria.
No, she's saying, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, okay. I just think that's really a fascinating sentence at the end, that you're on the path of karma yoga. And I understand the part about renunciation and sacrifice and how, in a way, there is a bhakti to karma yoga. You're devoted to the service and to those you're serving. And so I can see how that, ahamkara is destroyed. But this sentence is so interesting. And with its destruction of the ahamkara, the blinding veils fall away from his eyes and he's filled with jnana and bhakti. And I understand that the three paths are one, but that's a little more mysterious to me, that the karma yoga has the blinding veils fall away and then suddenly there's jnana and bhakti. Anybody have any insights on that?
There is a quote from HPV where she says, wisdom comes from getting rid of the veils of, from the higher consciousness, so that if through karma we get rid of the ego, then the wisdom of buddhi comes. And I guess that's how jnana would come into place.
Maria, did you say something?
No, I was just going to say that performing action as duty suggests that we're no longer under the sway of the push and pull of desire and have achieved a certain poise or a certain balance and a sense of our own direction in life and our own calling. Also, that sense of duty implies a sense of something higher than ourselves, a higher purpose. And so all the reactions that sap so much of our energy and the desires that pull us here and there have begun to fade. But there's still maybe a strong sense of individuality, of I. But then when that I is laid on the altar of our greatest love, we could say that, then that sense of renunciation and sacrifice is blended with duty, and a great burden is lifted from us. At least that's what the text suggests.
Okay, Pablo Maniti.
I just want to say that the Bhagavad Gita is has a 3 sections and 6 chapters. The 3 sections are karma yoga, karma yoga, sorry, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. So through the book, Krishna guide Arjuna to all these 3 paths with questions and answers. So it's like Pablo say, it's very interesting to follow each one of the sections, and we can be very passionate or comfortable with any one of them. Karma, jnana, yoga, bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is beautiful because it's more to the love through God or through um, our inner self, which is the way to discover who we are. So that my little thought about.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Let's go ahead and if someone will start with Yana Yoga and then just kind of pause after the paragraph finishes. And if anyone has any comment, otherwise we can continue to read. There's the 3 paragraphs and discuss it all in one. Okay. Do I have any takers?
I can read again if no one wants to.
Thank you. Oh, wait, I just want to say that footnote that you read about
Shankar.
Shankaracharya goes with this section.
You did a better job of pronouncing it too.
I used to walk around the TS in Wheaton and say Janarajadasa, Janarajadasa, Janarajadasa. So every time someone's name come up, that's all I would walk around for a week.
Yeah, and he's the Shankara is the founder of Vedanta, and that's what we will see now.
And if it helps anybody, I don't know much about Sanskrit, but if it's an S with a little tilde over it or a little mark, it's an SH sound. So that'll help.
So, for the Jnana Marga, a man develops his intellect by study pursued through many lives until he has reached a point at which he begins to weary of the mere knowledge and seeks the permanent truth of which all knowledge is but a part. Then he must develop viveka, discrimination between the real and the unreal. Parayaga, disgust for the unreal. Shatsampati, the 6 mental qualifications. Sama, control of the mind. Dhamma, control of the body. Upariti, broad-minded tolerance. Titiksha, endurance. Shraddha, faith. Samadhana, balance. You must have.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
This is Spanish, right? the longing for liberation from the transitory. Then, with all these, he is the Adhikaren, the man fitted to receive initiation into yoga. Now I know everyone wanted that paragraph. Let me continue.
Yeah.
Those are the qualifications, by the way, that we find in At the Feet of the Master.
I was gonna
Also.
say, yeah.
But when she talks about it in the beginning, the top of the paragraph, she goes, develops his intellect by study pursued through many lives. Well, that means many reincarnations.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, and I thought, so here you are trying to further your evolution, but yet you have to go through many reincarnations to develop your intellect. And that's in this particular marga, it sounds like.
According to the Hindu chronology that Blavatsky said is quite accurate, and she used that chronology, we are kind of halfway evolution, which means that if you don't make an effort to evolve, you will get to the goal in 2 billion years of reincarnations. So that's a long way to go. So when we start working on spirituality, on purpose, it may take a few thousand years, which for us it may seem like a lot, but compared to 2 billion years is very fast.
So that's what the occult path is, that sped up evolution in theosophy.
And most of the growth happens in the last couple of incarnations, if I thought I read that in Leadbeater.
Yeah, there is a
Exponential.
exponential growth.
Yeah, exponential growth. I'll continue. Then he follows the Jnana Yoga, and discerning the valueness of the transitory, he becomes the Paravayaka, the wanderer unattached by desire, the homeless man. By a deeper vision, he realizes the permanent and rests on that as his secure foundation. So becoming the Kuchi Chaka, the dweller in the hut, abiding in that one secure resting place. Then he feels the self-consciousness clearly, realizes the I, and sees the same I in others, the Hamsa stage. Rising above it, as the spiritual vision is clarified and consciousness expands, he becomes the Paramahansa, beyond the I, and realizes I am he.
Okay. So,
Continue.
no. So that's Jnana Yoga. Let's wait a minute.
Yep.
Yeah. Any,
So those 4 stages would represent the 4 initiations.
what 4 stages?
The one, the wanderer, the dweller, the Hamsa, and the Paramahansa. Those represents the 4 initiations in theosophy.
Okay.
So she mentions now twice this hut. We have the hut in the stage of the karma yoga. He builds this hut and has a solitary place for meditation. And now we have the hut, abiding in the one secure resting place, the dweller in the hut. So I have a feeling this is symbolic at a deeper level, the hut.
It is, but isn't it also, yes, I totally agree with that. But isn't it also like the symbology of leaving the home and dwelling someplace else? Is that?
Yeah, that also probably also it means a person that is that lives from, I would say, probably the higher ego, the causal body. So it's dwelling in the causal body, and from there any action comes from there. It is in the 4th initiation that the monad is realized. So in the 3rd is probably when the higher ego is already the home of the person.
So you're saying the hut is the causal body?
That could be another interpretation. We don't know. We are, symbols can be interpreted in many ways. I think all the ways we are saying make sense.
Did you have any insights on that, Lisa? Okay.
Well, I'm kind of drawing from I've been doing Paramahansa Yogananda's esoteric teaching, and that would refer to this kind of center inside the head where you're building that in meditation, so you can project through the eye this way and the ultimate major center and the head center, kind of creating the triangle in the eye there. So you build something similar to a hut there, and from that resting place in your meditation, you then start to activate these higher centers. I've seen that not only in his system, but other systems. I'm hesitant sometimes to mention it because I don't know the esoteric tradition of Besant, etc. But that's something that inspires me from other traditions.
Okay, do we have a reader for Bhakti Yoga?
I can read it.
Thank you.
Bhakti Marga is trodden by the soul whose affections are drawn towards some manifested aspect of God. Its early stages are those of devoted worship, of deep love and reverence. Gradually, the soul takes on the qualities it worships, becoming that which it adores. The non-attachment gained by renunciation in karma marga, by discrimination in jnana marga, it gains by expelling all lower attachments by the one attachment to its Lord. By love, it conquers all baser desires, and they wither for lack of expression. Sacrifice is a joyful acting out of devotion.
Pause there for a moment. Are there any comments or discussion on that first paragraph? Okay, so then she says each of the 4 stages is trodden with love. And she's talking about the stages on page 34 in my book, so maybe 35 in yours. And these are, here, will you read that first one and then go down and then read that.
Okay, so she said earlier, Hinduism divides the evolution of the individual soul into 4 stages, represented by the fourfold order of castes. So then it says the lowest stage is that of the Shudra, where there was little obligation save the duty of obedience and service. The next stage was that of the Vaishya, where wealth was permitted, its gathering was encouraged, and the soul had to learn unselfishness in its use. In the third stage, that of the Kshatriya, life itself, and not only material goods, was to be held as a sacrifice. I should have said like the translation. So the Shudra, the first one is like the servant. The Vaishya, the second one, is the merchant. The Kshatriya is the warrior. So life itself, and not only material goods, was to be held as a sacrifice. And finally comes the caste of the Brahmana. Those are the priests, wherein nothing that is transitory should have power to attract. So those are the ideals,
Right. So that then we can. That was important to me because it gave the theory behind the caste system that Hinduism uses. That's not put in place today. I mean, yeah, like you said, the ideal, but degraded into what it is today.
Because each of the castes have a different morality. So the way Besant puts it, she said that the Manu organized the castes in this way. And actually you see in the book of Manu, this description. So the first one, the servants, they had very little, those were supposed to be for younger souls, and they had very little moral duties, just respect and be of service. And then the merchants had a higher bar. They were expected to, do things in a more complex way.
Not cheat people.
Yeah, not cheat people. If a person would find a servant cheating, that of course it was not good, but it's like the expectations would be lower. And then you have the warrior and the priests. But then Besant says that because of ambition and desire, souls started to be born in different castes, not the ones that really belong to them. And that's when the system got out of whack.
I mean, it almost seems that that structure could be more easily applied to how to set up the community and how to guide and run the community on the day-to-day life rather than from a spiritual perspective. I mean, that's the way it strikes me, that there was more of, here's a way to help guide the people in day-to-day life. Almost, from the bottom up rather than the top down.
Yeah. Well, the word chela means servant. So in the spiritual life, and when you see how it is described, in Besant, the idea is that you start over, as Michelle was saying. You now are a servant when you are aspiring to enter the path.
Right.
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I hope it's okay. Yogananda has an interesting way of looking at these four. The Sudra is the person who is still attached to the body identified state. They're the materialists, no matter what caste you're in, if that's what you're doing. That's in the yoga system considered that. The Vaishya state is the one who is just cultivating the discriminating spiritual states of mind. The Kshatri is one who is fighting with the mind to gain control with the mind. And then the Brahmin is the one who is finally identified with spirit.
Thanks. Okay, Dana, you want to go ahead and read the next paragraph? Each of the four stages.
Yeah, each of the four stages.
Each of the four stages is trodden with love as the active means of accomplishment until the love that worshipped finds the object of its worship. Embracing it, feels itself merging into complete unity with its beloved.
Go on.
In truth, the three paths blend, and in the higher stages, one cannot be separated from the other. For the karma yogan is full of bhakti, and also by his sacrifice destroys ahamakara, and thus becomes perfect in wisdom. The jnana and the bhakta each takes on the qualities of the other. In the heart of the bhakta, wisdom arises spontaneously, and in the heart of the jnana, bhakti flowers as the inevitable result of vision.
Yeah, ahamkara is the sense of I-ness, the ego.
Okay, do we want to go on?
I just ask, so when that paragraph starts, each of the four stages of love as the act means of accomplishment, until the love that worshipped finds the object of its worshipped.
Right here.
What's the word of the worship? No, I don't see that.
Until the love that's worshipped finds the
Oh, the
object of its worship.
Worshipped, embracing it.
Okay. So what's your question about that or comment?
Well, just trying to, for some reason, maybe not reading it right. So the love that worshipped
It's like the observer is the observer.
finds the object of its worship embracing. I didn't know if anybody, how people read that.
Yeah, say.
No, I won't be able to say it
right.
I know
no,
the
she
word.
was saying
No,
that.
I know the word.
Read it right.
Talking about the observer is the observed. So if you have a duality or a triplicity, you have the object and the subject, and then its relation. So Krishnamurti says, is it the observer, the observed, and the observing is the relationship. So when we've let go of the I-ness, then the observer becomes the observed. So it's
Right.
kind of, it's the unity,
the
union, that's what it is.
Okay, and she just says it differently, and
Yeah.
and I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks.
It's helpful because she's moving from the the consideration of the person who is loving to love itself, and how the love itself is the force that is united with its object, with its beloved. I think it's interesting the way she moves back and forth. I also feel as though these margas and the movement into yoga is so much more healthy, so much more wholesome than the caste system. And when Lisa, when you were talking about, was it Yogananda's view of the caste system, that sounds so much more of an elevated way of imagining them, rather than to have leadership somehow deciding who is, or your genetics, your family, pulling you into one caste or another, when you may have come in with a very high and noble state of consciousness. So I'm glad the caste system is crumbling, and that maybe something more elevated is taking.
Yeah, actually,
place.
Besant fought against the caste system and the TS. You know, the first object is about that, and the newspapers in India. At that time, the only place in India where people of different castes would eat together at the same table was the TS, and there were in the newspapers news about this because it was completely, you know, unheard of. I find it also interesting when Besant talks about this anthropologically, how this was a fact in Indian society, this division, and as long as it was true, you know, she said that it was very helpful, that the problems in the world begin to appear when a person that is spiritually immature to lead,
Ambition.
right, gets into position of leadership, or when a person, you know, she said, up to the point that the castes were really working, there was order, and people were not asked more than they could do, and they were not given more responsibility that they could respond to. But then it degenerates, as you are saying, and at that point you just have to get rid of it.
I was watching Downton Abbey and noticed the hierarchy that they have there. And in a true, you know, one that like a master that rules his, whatever you call it, his castle with love and devotion, you know, in Downton Abbey, the guy's doing it. He's like, well, if we fired everybody, you know, what would they do? And I can see even in the servants, the elegance of understanding their job there. So,
And the devotion that was between the
two, right.
But of course, we misuse it, and then it becomes
Right. Yeah, and we can see that very easily. Okay, shall we go on?
One last question.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Just what Dana was talking about, and you and Pablo were commenting on. So, I mean, that wasn't duality. So that was, I mean, that was like non-duality.
Mm-hmm. That's moving from
what I would call contemplation, that level of spiritual awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, you know, what Michelle said just now, because Besant is relating that to the castes as they used to work. And you can see how, you know, the servant can develop devotion for the master if the master is also fair and takes care of the servant. Then how the merchant can develop devotion for the family that he's sustaining. Then the warrior,
the family that's sustaining the merchant by purchasing their goods.
Yeah, and then the warrior, the devotion for the country, or, you know, and then obviously the Brahman for the devotion for the divine. So I think she was saying that all these castes, if the person has the right attitude, can lead you into that devotion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, combining what you were saying and what Lisa was saying, then is it at that level, they're talking about reaching Buddhimanas.
Probably what I mean in the way that Besant puts it, I don't know if a servant could reach that
No,
level.
I mean, when you go through it all, when you get to the
When you go
Yeah,
through
yeah.
all, yes,
The
yes.
beloved.
you reach that higher level, so it's just that level of
And again, it's hard to talk in these terms because today a person that is a servant doesn't mean that is less anything. But at the time, if it worked in that way, these were younger souls.
right.
And so, but
Yeah, I was kind of looking at the names we've attached them as just being
yeah,
transitory and trying to understand what was behind the effort, what the effort was, the personal or a consciousness was.
Mhm.
Because it's just, the approach you had mentioned, you and Michelle, and then Lisa's approach, which was different, but they're the same. So it's just,
And Hinduism,
Well-
that's that a lot that
Those are those
uses.
keys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Hinduism uses all these different stages and applies them in different ways. You can apply them socially or to,
Right.
evolution of the
Personally.
person. Yeah.
So that's how HPB said we should read the Secret Doctrine. There's these different keys that we use,
Right.
that we can look at it, from the not the cello, the celestial beings, look at it from our personal. So I think that's very helpful.
okay, thank you.
Okay, we're almost done. All right, who will read the next paragraph in the later stages?
I can read again,
Thank you.
now that I'm all practiced up on my words.
All right.
In the later stages of each path, as soon as his services are needed, the guru appears and takes the soul under his guidance. The man becomes a Shishya or Chela. The guru does not come to the unprepared, the unready. Though the impatience of man often cries out for his presence, when that presence would be unheeded, were it there. He leads the soul through the later stages, giving such adjusting aid as is required, helping it to unfold the divine potentialities within it, thus hastening its evolution until achievement is reached. Then the Chela, in his turn, becomes the liberated soul, ready and fit to help onwards the less advanced. He becomes the Jivatmuka, living in the body still, a link between physical humanity and spiritual humanity, a channel of divine love and strength to man. Or he may become the Videkha living in the invisible world, still yielding service to the one, still carrying out the divine purpose, serving in other ways as a channel of spiritual life to men.
Can you pause right there a second?
Yeah.
Thanks. So there's 3 footnotes. Chela, we already talked about, meant disciple or pupil. And then the Jivan Mukta was the liberated soul. Now, would this be the adept in
Yeah.
theosophy? An adept in theosophy? And the Videha Mukta is the liberated bodiless one. And in theosophy's definition, this is the Nirmanakaya.
Yeah, because Mahatmas, they still have a physical body. Nirmanakayas, they don't have a physical body. They are only on the inner planes.
But this goes back to what Elena brought up last week. These are the ones that come back and help.
They help from the inner planes, but
Right.
they don't do any physical.
No, I know, but these two, both the Jivan Mukta and the Videha Mukta,
Mhm.
don't just
Oh,
liberate.
those
and
are the
go
ones
on.
that don't.
These are the Bodhisattvas.
Yes,
No.
I mean, I'm not sure how much of this is Besant's interpretation,
Oh,
I don't know if in Hinduism they think that the Videha Mukta is not in Nirvana.
oh, okay.
The impression there isn't much written about the Videha Mukta, but the impression that I get is they think that person is in Nirvana, leaves the body behind and is just absorbed in Nirvana. Sometimes they would say you are a Jivan Mukta when your body dies. You are a Videha Mukta in Nirvana.
Okay.
But Besant may be saying esoterically this corresponds, to these
what we
two.
know. Okay. Any other comments or additions? Okay. All right. Anybody else want to take us down the final stretch? All right, Doug, it's all yours.
All right, and I'll do the last quarter.
Thanks.
These mighty ones pay their debts to their own gurus by service of the present and of the future, Sisaya, just as they receive their own illumination from gurus developed in the past. Thus, universe succeeds universe, each aiding its successors until our thought fails to express itself, and the human faculty sinks down, unable to soar further. Such, most imperfectly expressed, is the religion founded in immemorial antiquity. That has come down from the rishis. Such ought to be your religion, heirs of the past, descendants of those mighty ones, just in so far as you can live it. In so far are you really their heirs. Just in so far as this is dear to you and practiced by you, are you learning the lesson of evolution, as it was taught by them and given to the people they instructed. Just so far are you profiting by opportunities greater than those offered to any other nation. Opportunities that, wasted, will be bewailed by you under less favorable conditions in many a life to come.
Any comments, questions, inspirations?
I have one little comment. I just wanted to tell you that okay, when we were discussing the third footnote on my book, it's on page 41. It says these were the qualifications laid down by Sri Shankar. I don't know if I can say Sri Shankaracharya. Did I say it somewhat right? But anyhow, I went and got this from my puja room. I don't know if you can see it, but anyhow, I'll just read it to you.
Okay.
I've mentioned it once before, but it was so outstanding, I wanted to mention it again. It's in the Theosophist, March 2020. It's the first few pages, and it's a talk that Mr. Tim Boyd gave at the Sri, and here we go again, Shankaracharya, Sanskrit University. And it was just an excellent, and then they didn't have his counter at the university, which would not be the Theosophical Society, but they didn't have what that gentleman said. But I just thought it was so wonderful in an age like we're now in, where we can, I don't know, I heard a lot of times that, well, I won't mention, one of our past presidents of the American section would talk about we cannot cooperate with someone else because we are the Theosophical Society, but this was one time when we could. And it's just such a wonderful thing because we're living in an age of cooperation, or we should be cooperating with each other. And apparently the people, the university, the Sanskrit University students are going to be coming over to Adyar and be able to stay there and study the manuscripts. And so it's very wonderful that there's that cooperation. In my lifetime, you wouldn't have seen any type of cooperation, nada, anywhere. And so it's wonderful.
In Adyar, that was always the case. Every time, I lived in Adyar for 2 years, and there were always scholars coming to the library and studying the Sanskrit.
Well, why did they make this talk? You can read it. You just get it and read. You might want to see what it says, but it made it look like this was something new that they would now be able to, well, maybe they would do it within the auspices of the two groups. Maybe
Yeah,
that's what.
maybe they are doing something more official, but
the students.
yeah, or maybe the students, maybe it's a program to make it more, available. But
But Adyar's already always been open.
I met the scholars when they were there in Adyar when I was living there. So yeah.
But I truly believe in Sanskrit, so that's what it is. Why I'm so enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in the latest edition of the Quest magazine, Michael Gomes wrote an article about Hinduism, and I read it, and I can't tell you what it was about.
You don't remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So the latest one, there's an article about Hinduism in there. So are there any other comments, takeaways?
I had one I wanted to say real quick, because I was kind of going ahead and reading some other chapters. And, when you think of when this was written, this is remarkable now, let alone back then, and let alone a woman writing it and giving these talks. I mean, I just continue to get emotional. Such a deep respect for her work, and these lectures are incredible. So I just had to say it was really.
No, and you mentioned when we went to Harvard, Harvard organized a conference on the impact of theosophy on the study of religions, and they invited some people from the TS to give lectures. So I gave a talk, and my talk was about exactly this, what Besant says, that the only way you can understand the religion is by being sympathetic to the religion. Because scholars do exactly the opposite. They think that being sympathetic is a weakness, that you become biased. So they take this critical view, and they misinterpret basically everything. And I explained the theosophical approach is this: you are sympathetic, you are open-minded, you try to see the truth that is there, not that from your position you try to attack it. And they didn't like it. They didn't like it. And but the scholars are still stuck in criticizing from outside.
I think one of the most beautiful statements in that closing was when she addresses her audience as heirs of the past, descendants of these mighty ones. This was more than just sympathy. She actually, you could feel the reverence and the respect she had for the Hindu faith as she tried to express it. And it reminds me a little of the way we're spoken to in the Voice of the Silence, where we're addressed as the conqueror of Mara, and oh, one of heart most merciful. You feel as though you're being addressed in a noble way. It's lifting you right into what you were meant to, something higher, what you were meant to be. And I think I agree very much with Lisa and all of you that she is, Besant was just remarkable in her maturity.
All right. Okay, so
What are you doing next Tuesday? Oh.
So we have finished Hinduism, our study of Hinduism. Next week, we move on to, or next month, we move on to Buddhism. We have a friend of mine that I grew up next door to their family, Santikaro Upasaka.
Yeah,
Upasaka. He's spoken at the at the TS many times. So I took advantage of Zoom and asked him if he'd give a talk. So next Tuesday is November 3rd, which is also election night. So I gave him the choice to record it ahead, but he thought it might be a nice break for us to break from watching or listening to what's going on with voting and then he said he can even give us, how, from a Buddhist point of view, how to handle this chaos. So he thought that would be very practical for us. So, all right. So we're good. We're good. Thank
Good.
you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Night.